Good morning, everybody, and welcome to InsureTalk10. My name is Nontutsoko Mhlungu, and I will be your host for this session. Now, picking up on the very high note we left off on in InsureTalk9, where the theme was around the future of insurance, we're continuing in that same trajectory with the central theme of today's talks being around innovation. It's often been said that innovation used to be an option, almost reserved for startup techs. But as we can see, that is no longer the case. It's become absolutely critical and essential for the survival of any business. So looking forward to some of those insights that will be shared by our speakers here today. Speaking of which, this is our agenda. It is appearing on the screen now. This is what you can look forward to. And of course, in true InsureTalk fashion, you can look forward to this stellar lineup that we always promise. And of course, do remember that the session has been accredited for 2.5 CPD hours, courtesy of the IISA, so you can look forward to that. I do know that the deadline for meeting your CPD requirements is edging closer and closer. That is the end of May, so do take advantage of these sessions. Let me pause now to just acknowledge our sponsors here for today, without whom this event would not be possible. CIB is, of course, our headline sponsor today, and our guest speaker, Graham Codrington, whom you'll get to hear a little bit later on in the session, has been brought to us courtesy of CIB. So a huge thank you to CIB for your continued support of InsureTalk. And then, of course, our other event partners include Munich Re, the IISA, as well as Cover Magazine coming on board as our media sponsor. And then, of course, a huge thank you to you, our attendees, for your continued support of InsureTalk. We do encourage you to engage us through this session. We've got the Q&A portal that you can engage us on. If you have any comments, do make use of that. Not the chat portal, but the Q&A portal. And then, of course, our hashtag today, if you are active on the socials, do make use of that. It is hashtag InsureTalk10. That is hashtag InsureTalk10. If you want to tweet, do let us know what you think of the session today as we go on. All right, and then lastly, just before we kick off with the first speaker, just a reminder that InsureTalk11 is already up on the CN&CO events.com.
Good morning to everybody, and it's a real pleasure to take part on the InsureTalk 10th edition today. So what are we talking about today? It's about innovation, and then you tell me, what are you bringing pandemic to innovation, Bell? So first of all, my name is Belhassan Tonat, and I am the head of short-term insurance for Munich Re in Africa, based in Johannesburg. The topic today is about pandemic and innovation together. But before we go there, maybe I would like you to tell me what would be the cost of pandemic to the insurance industry in South Africa. We all have actually looked at this Supreme Court decisions in South Africa in the last couple of weeks and months, and we know that insurance companies have been also confirming their coverages of lockdowns and the pandemic as an associated event. So if you can type in your Q&A questions, just a number, and I can tell you it's in the billion of rands. So just to have an idea, is it really a topic worth talking about? Or is it just a few millions which nobody cares about? I would really be keen to see few numbers here, and I tell you it's in billions. Yes. At least it's a double digit. I'm not sure if we're going to get to the triple digit. I see 100 billions, 15, 150, 3.5, 50, and 30. Thanks, Thomas and David. The estimates are between 30 and 50 billion rand. This would be the non-physical damage business interruption coverages in the South African market. Just to put this in a little bit in relation, the overall short-term insurance premium in South Africa is 130, 140 billion rand. So if an event goes to 50 billion, this is more than 35% of the overall country premium in 1 year. This is unprecedented. We are talking about 10 times, 20 times the Knysna fire of 2017. And this is covered by the insurance industry. If you ask many insurers, nobody tell you that they have actually got a premium for that. So this is a coverage which is most likely with zero premium. So it's really a pure loss to their P&L. So I do see it's really quite an interesting topic that we can maybe go a little bit deeper into that and see what insurance companies can provide as an innovative coverage in this space. So quickly, the agenda for the today's meeting, quick introductions on pandemic. What is it not? Some recent examples or recent events. And maybe the third part is where we would like to spend the most of our time today to talk about possible risk transfer solutions to it. But before we start, let me introduce to you the persona or the person who's going to follow up with us today in this meeting. I called it Mrs. Successful Broker, a lady running a great shop of 6 employees, one of the most successful brokers in the country. They had a very huge pandemic effect. Almost 6 months of income are lost in that year, 2020. They usually used to do 12 million rand of fee income or brokerage income per year. What they have done, they unfortunately retrenched 3 members of their company. And now she is asking herself, should I consider a business interruption coverage in the future? Now we're going to help her through our journey today, if it's a good decision to take a coverage for future pandemic or not in this space. So maybe we're going to help her in point number 4. What is the insurance premium? And I would like really to very much simplify what is this all about. We know that an insurance premium is a severity times a frequency. Assuming a severity of 6 months and the frequency of 10 years. So we said she lost 6 months of income. This is 6 million rand. Assuming this happens every 10 years, what would be the premium which she needs to pay? And as an insurer and a broker, unfortunately, we work for free. And we are asking about the net premium. So ignore the cost of brokerage, management expenses, expected profits. So what would be just the premium? And I would love to see some numbers in the Q&A. What would be the premium which she needs to pay if this event happens every 10 years and she expects a 6 months or 6 million of loss of recovery? Some actuaries in the room, they will give us some numbers. 50K. Okay. 100K. I think 16 billion is still the answer to the first question. 25,000. I think it's per month. This 25,000 or per 100 per month. So 1.2. Yeah, we are close. We are close. Thanks, guys. So the premium would be 600,000 rand. So this is the 6 months, 6 million divided roughly by 12. So 500 something, 500,000. So it's 5% of the annual income. And now my last question to you today. Would you buy this premium with this coverage for that premium? Yes or no? Is it too expensive? You know, if she chooses her specific cover salaries, she can manage her risk and therefore her premium will be to the risk. Yes, definitely, Richardson. Dicker. So no, it's too expensive, says Reese. No. Yes, Jacqueline. So I see there is an over proportional of no. It's maybe the price is too high and too expensive. And no, guys, we are expecting a 10-year frequency of the pandemic. Let's go a little bit into the pandemic and understand our very simplistic assumptions about severity and frequency. In the past, we said a pandemic or an epidemic is more a local event. And to be frank with you, usually we say it happens in China. And it's very rare that it comes to us in Africa. But if you look to this map, and these are the points of air traffic per day in the world, not in 2020, before that. I think this is the map of 2018. This is the air traffic and the number. Each blue point there is an aircraft. And these are the lines and the routes between the countries. So this will make any threat actually very much a global threat. And we have seen it with the COVID-19. Let me share with you a little bit the history. Let's go back to 100 years ago, when the first pandemic, which at least we can record, struck. And this is the Spanish flu. And it's not called Spanish flu because it started in Spain, actually. It started, we don't know exactly where it started. Some say it's the Kansas in the United States, some say it's in China. But I think the name comes from because the late Alfonso VIII, I think he was the king of Spain at that time, or the king of Iberia, got very ill and very sick from this flu at that time. And that's why they thought that it's coming from Spain, but it's just because it hit the Spanish king at that time. And then the next one was the Asian flu, which is almost, 40 years later. And then the interval, the Hong Kong flu, as the name says, was very much actually concentrated in Hong Kong. And then we have the smallpox and HIV, if we consider it actually as also a virus. So if you see until the 80s, we had maybe 5 or 6 big outbreaks. But what happened afterwards? So here, any actuaries among us will say, oh, the frequency is maybe something between 5 and 10 years. It's and then the severity is not really that high, like the Spanish flu. The others, they were very local event, and the severity would be really, really low in certain country. And we can easily talk about a worldwide spread, or the premium would not very low there. But what has happened the last decade is this. So this is the frequency of viruses outbreaks in the last 2 decades. From 2003, you can't stop counting. I think more than 12 or 13 already. And the red ones, they were declared actually by the public health emergency of it's a public health and emergency of international concern. COVID-19 was even declared a pandemic in March 2020. So was Ebola and the swine flu and the SARS and the likes. So it means actually in the last decade, we have seen an increased frequency of this kind of losses of risks. So the actuaries, because we always look actually forward, we would think that the frequency of such a global event is not anymore 10 years. It's much, much less than that. And you know, if you think that an event has a higher frequency, it has an immediate impact on the premium, because the premium is a factor of severity. So the premium would even increase further down. So we are getting the nose maybe would be much more than previously if you're going to pay such a high premium for such a coverage. But let's now look to the recent examples and what are the economic losses of them. SARS 2013, we had roughly 700 fatality only. The cases, 8,000. 8,000 guys, this is what we do. What we do double of it in our wave 2 in South Africa in the number of COVID-19 cases. We had days with 19 and 18,000 cases per day, actually. So this was compared to today, nothing. And despite this, we have seen some economic losses and loss in revenues in the billions of dollars, mainly in Canada, actually, and in China. And this was 2003. 2015, the MERS, this is the Middle East Respiratory Syndrome. Fatality 36, cases 186. South Korea, the tourism decline had an economic loss of 2.6 billion US dollars. Saudi Arabia also had a small outbreak there. So just you see the big impact of such viruses. Ebola had also on the western coast of Africa a lot of economic losses, mainly on very, very fragile company like Liberia or Sierra Leone. Ebola again in 2014. So what we have seen here, 50% of decline in tourism demand in Tanzania. What you think, what does Tanzania has to do with the Ebola, which was outbreak here? So if we look, this is Tanzania, Liberia, and this is actually Tanzania here. It's complete opposite on the African continent, but nevertheless, it's also felt there. Why it is important? It's not about premium and income. It's also about our sustainable development goals. And I'm sharing with you here the most known 17 United Nations sustainable development goals, which we are committed to pursue. The most affected ones are the number 8 and 9. A decent work and economic growth. With the pandemic, we have seen what it has done to the growth in South Africa. In 1 year, already on a very fragile economy, we are having a -8 to -10 decline in the GDP. And as you can imagine, what would be the impact of such a decrease on actually employment or unemployment in South Africa? I could have shared also some figures from the South African Reserve Bank. We have seen an increase of unemployment between 3 to 5 million jobs in the last 9 months. And this is unprecedented figures we've never seen in South Africa before. The number 9 is actually its impact on innovation and industry and the infrastructure. How can we push further our economy, which needs to grow in order to attract more talent and to face this unemployment risk which is facing the country? So as you see, it's very important and very much linked to our sustainable development goals. So what has happened and what have we seen in the last couple of months in the world, not only in South Africa? I think on the left-hand side for me here, the competing resource requirement. Only today in the news, we heard that there's going to be a delay in the AstraZeneca, for example, export from India because they stopped their export to suffice local demand first. And then, of course, all these legal social debates we have, who needs to vaccinate first, the politicians, the frontline workers, and so on. So it's a kind of a mistrust in the society, which might lead to some destabilizations. We are hopefully very cognizant about this fact in South Africa here, and we leave the first line to the frontline workers to be vaccinated first. In other countries, there is a race who needs to get vaccinated first, and this might lead to some social unrests. Thanks God, we are privileged to have a very well understood priority list here in South Africa, but nevertheless, we are experiencing the delay in the vaccinations compared to the worldwide endeavors. So this is a paradigm shift which we would like to talk about it today, and it's not by accident that I started with the Mrs. Successful Broker, who, according to the most of answers we have seen, she will not take an insurance cover for pandemic. Why? Because it's maybe very expensive. And if we look to any coverage, actually, it must be unpredictable in order to be covered. So if you can predict it, it's going to happen. It's not a question of if it's going to happen or not. It will happen. It's a question of when and severity, then it makes it very difficult to insure. If it's unavoidable, so if it's something which you know, why do you have car insurance? Because we think it's not predictable. You don't know if you wake up in the morning, you don't know that you're gonna have a car accident. Usually you can avoid it if you drive slowly and you pay full attention and you don't drink while driving. You decrease the probability or the likelihood of an accident, and therefore a motor accident is insurable. So epidemic risks is often assumed to be unpredictable, unavoidable, and uninsurable as a consequence. And this is what I want to take you through now to say, if we have these assumptions that we cannot insure it, how can we as insurer push the boundaries of insurability with innovative ideas to make pandemic insurable? Why do we want to make it insurable? Because we believe that as an insurance industry, we have a role to play in allowing this economy to grow. Anything which is not insurable, it might not happen. The investors would not invest in any infrastructure project if you tell them we are not insuring it. You take the risk. So our job and I would say our contribution to the sustainable development as insurer, reinsurer, brokers, I would call them the risk community, is to take risks from the mind of the investors, to allow them to insure, to pump money into the economy to grow as we want them to grow. So insurance solution, we would like to attract investors and to make our economies and society more resilient. So this is the challenge. And I would like really to challenge everybody here. Let's do this challenge together. Despite this bulb here, where it's taken from the high frequency of pandemic or viruses, we want to keep this loss or this risk insurable. What is our goal today? As any innovative project, you start with a prototype. We do few things in the beginning, and then we would like to increase the number of insured with the time. And then on the long term, we would like to have really, there is no project or no investment is delayed because the lack of insurance for such risks. So this is really our aim and what to do it. What is our contribution? What can we do? We, as Munich Re of Africa, we have experience in this business. We have 140 years commitment to the risk industry. We have a net capacity. We have a strong balance sheet. But the most important thing is the base, and it's the bottom. And this is a significant industry and risk expertise. How have we built this expertise along the way? An epidemic outbreak model. We don't do it alone. It's not our maybe core business. Therefore, we do collaborate with the WHO, with Gideon, with the Metabiota, which is a startup, a very innovative startup company in the Silicon Valley, to get a database of disease outbreaks worldwide. And we have built 30,000 data entries in that. And then we add to that the second level of the geographical spread. We had identified 70 models or 70 variables which might influence the spread of an epidemic. And so there is a lot of things actually which we are doing. We have a policy, we have a curve of vulnerability. So for the actuaries among us here, we can even dig deeper into that and talk about the pricing model of Epidemic. But for the sake of time, and just to give you an overview here, I would skip that. And just to tell you that with 30,000 database entries, with including 70 others, what we call geographical factor for geographical contagions and climate zones, and how well prepared is a country to face such an epidemic outbreak. The preparedness of South Africa is different from the preparedness of Sierra Leone or the United States or India or China. Every country could have, there are many factors which influence his preparedness level or ranking, I would call it. You all remember the discussions we had beginning last year when we said, how many ICU beds do we have ready in South Africa per 100,000 patients, for example? So these factors, they play a role into the spread also locally and globally. So, but as I said, we cannot do it alone. We do it with our insurance clients, with the brokers, with other alliances. And this is our aim, to really get an alliance where we can face it together. We bring a certain knowledge, we bring a capacity to the market, but what we call here, we would like to create an IFI, stands here for International Financial Institutions. We are one of them, Munich Re, but we are more than happy to get also other FIIs, 1 to N, to contribute to this facility, to commit a certain exposure, to really respond to certain projects and make them flourish and make them possible. If we want to, let's take here the example of an infrastructure project. If an investor is not willing to invest in a certain country because of the high risk of an outbreak of a pandemic or an epidemic, then we are losing an infrastructure project which will create jobs and will create an attractiveness of the geographical location, Johannesburg, for example, if it's in Johannesburg, for international investors. We don't want this to be a hurdle towards the investment in our economy. So, and this is the same actually. So we are open to discussion, and this is here an appeal to everybody. We are committed, and we look to other companies who are committed too. I will leave some time for discussions. We still have 10 minutes, but maybe roughly the projects we have or the idea, the risk transfer solutions we have. So the epidemic trigger and the economic trigger. The idea is really to have a trigger-based insurance product, which has double trigger. Number one, if the local fatalities meets a threshold. Example here, we say, if in Mpumalanga, we have more than 1,000 people infected by a new virus XYZ. Or we say the WHO declares it as a pandemic, then this is trigger number one. Trigger number two, the insured needs also to prove that he has a financial loss. And I go back to our Mrs. Successful Broker example. For sure, she can actually prove that she lost almost 6 million of brokerage income in last year. So therefore, this would trigger the coverage and there will be a payout to the insured. So this is really a very basic trigger-based, double trigger-based insurance product, which we would willing to put to the market. And we will not, it's like the vaccination. There's a huge demand, but there is not enough capacity. On the insurance and reinsurance side today, there is a huge demand for pandemic cover, but unfortunately, there is not much capacity available. As much as we would like to put capacity available, we are also limited with our own balance sheet. And ideally, we are also entertaining talks with the SAIA, for example, and also the IISA are part of it, to talk to the government as having the government as the last resort when it comes to such coverages. So we do believe that pooled solutions is maybe the way to go in such coverages, but also the private sector can play a major role there. You can ask one of the questions, what's the capacity of Munich Re in this business? So we can give the number. We say always we are committed to have an exposure of 500 million euro to 1 billion euro. So we are talking to 10 to 20 billion rand of capacity. But you remember the question I asked in the beginning, how much do we expect as losses in South Africa? And we agreed something between 20 and 30 billion. So Munich Re with 10 or 20 billion is a drop in the ocean in the worldwide exposure, and we cannot face the full exposure there. And so this is the idea, what we talk together, we can make the world more resilient. And together is not only with financial capacity, it's also with our brilliant ideas with the brokers, with the insurance community, and also to be innovative, to think outside of the box, and to push the boundaries of insurability. And I'm happy to take any questions, or I can give you one example maybe before I go there. I personally was in Korea in 2015, and you remember when I talked about the MERS outbreak in South Korea, which was here. South Korea, the tourism declined by 2.6 billion income. I was at that time Chief Underwriting Officer for the Munich Re office in Seoul in Korea. And we worked together with the tourism ministry in Korea, and we put a coverage to all the tourists coming to South Korea. They will be automatically covered against the MERS outbreak. So we put this cover in place within, I think, 18 days of work. And then from June 2015, the decline of this 2.1 million visitors went down actually to only 500,000 or 600,000. So we could save 75% of the decline in the months to come, because we put a very innovative product there. As you know, the 2.1 million non-citizen visitors in Korea are mainly Chinese tourists coming to Korea for what? Not for tourism only, for medical tourism. As you would know, Korea has developed maybe a plastic surgery tourism industry. There is a plastic surgeons, too many of them, working with Chinese patients, I would call it, and they have seen a huge decline in the number of patients. So it's not only tourism, it's actually medical tourism. And with this innovative cover, which costed the government, I think in Korea at that time, few millions of dollars, I think 5 or 6 millions only actually, the premium was, but it was a huge marketing campaign to continue to attract the the tourists or the patients from China to feed the plastic surgery clinics in South Korea and to generate revenue for thousands of people there. So these are kind of the ideas which we put in place very quickly there. That's it. And thank you so much for your attention. Happy to take 1 or 2 questions. I understand that we still have 5 minutes before the next speaker jumps in. I will open the Q&A. Ildiko, thanks for your comment. I think maybe you will find the paper here locally. We have how many? Almost 1,000 participants. I would say, Shingirai, for the presentations, maybe you can reach out to me and we send it. I cannot really send it to a wider audience unless I need to take some slides off because there is some confidential information there. So David, for your submissions on the risk transfer, the parametric risks for the FSCA, not yet, but therefore actually the product is a double trigger, if you remember. So there is a loss of revenue plus the parametrics, so the declarations of the cover. And we think this is a very standard product. I think nowadays we are paying business interruption losses in South Africa based on this loss of profit. So it's a very straightforward product. With a double trigger, you don't really need only the parametric regulatory approval. Has Munich Re ever thought of formulating a pandemic policy? Yes. Vincent, yes, we do have. There's one slide actually, which I haven't showed today. It has the module of the pandemic policy. So we can go really according to the insurance wording policy one by one. But I thought for the 35 minutes we have, it's not the right time to do so. Yes, I will share my emails in the chat box later. I'm writing my email in the chat box. Okay, what was Munich Re's capacity? I said 10 to 20 billion rand. If governments are willing to have the cover, I know from South Africa there is a huge interest to put in place a government-backed pool solution. So there are a few talks in this directions, and IISA or other industry associations are really involved in these discussions. So there is a willingness in South Africa, at least. The problem is not really the willingness. The problem is the availability of the financial fund and how much capacity can we make available to the market. Okay, that's it. I think we are on time, so we can hand over to the next speaker. We still have 2 minutes, I believe. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Tinat, for that insightful talk. As always, lots of questions coming through in the Q&A section, so our attendees seem to have really enjoyed that one. I want to apologize just before we go to our next speaker for what happened just before Tinat came on. I'm tempted to blame it on the gloomy weather, but you know the nature of live broadcast. All right, our next speaker now is Thokozile Mahlangu, who is, of course, the CEO of the IISA, and as per her regular segment here on InsureTalk, she will be giving us an update on the IISA. Without any further ado, then it's over to you, Thokozile.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is InsureTalk10. It is almost the end of Q1 of 2021. It is also almost the end of the current CPD cycle, which comes to an end on the 31st of May. By then, members are required to have recorded and have completed at least 18 hours in terms of the CPD policy. There are various activities that are recognized and can be awarded CPD hours. And those activities include things like this type of webinar, workshops, conferences, or seminars. And this is not only face-to-face, it also includes webinars or workshops that you may have attended online. We also recognize completion of an NQF level 6 or completion of modules within an NQF level 6. That's another way you can attain CPD hours. So there may have been many people that have recently graduated. I know there have been various graduations happening across the country. So if you're one of those who has completed an NQF level 6 or has completed some modules within that qualification, you can register that for CPD. Completion of a professional development program, such as a management development program, is also something we recognize for CPD. Self-structured study programs, this includes a thesis or a research that you're currently doing, that also can be recognized for CPD. Delivering a presentation, there we recognize both preparation time for the presentation as well as the actual presentation time. How many of you do presentations across the industry? That can also be recognized for the CPD hours. Attendance of industry meetings, particularly technical meetings, such as the SAIA meetings or FIE meetings, that also can earn CPD hours. Writing articles, this is referring to articles that you may be writing for Cover Magazine, FA News, FIA Inside, that earns you CPD hours. Delivering a lecture, you may be invited as a guest lecturer at one of the higher learning institutions. That preparation time and presentation time is also recognized. Professional reading, this is one of the most common ones that you probably know about. There's many content that is available out there for reading. I know Cover offers some, FA News offers some, so professional reading is something we also recognize for CPD hours. That counts two ways. There is verifiable professional reading, where we have pre-approved and accredited CPD hours to an article, and there's also non-verifiable. That's where you'd be reading an article on either an insurance magazine or a risk management magazine or a magazine that's related to your profession. You can submit that. We recognize it as a non-verifiable professional reading. Coaching and mentoring. Many of you guys do coaching. That also can be recognized. There has to be as evidence submitted that you can get in touch with us and we can share that with you. We are also open to explore other activities that you may be doing in your day-to-day life that are not part of what I've just listed or have gone through. So you're more than welcome to get in touch with us and check if some of those activities that you do could earn you CPD hours. So visit our portal on our website and record your CPD activities before the 31st of May. Furthermore, it's very important that you stay up to date on what CPD management is. To learn more about that, we have a CPD policy that's published on our website. So visit our website and just follow the link to the CPD policy. In closing, the AIE 2021 is coming up on the 2nd to the 3rd of August. That's another way you can earn CPD hours. The conference will be CPD accredited. So visit our website to register. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Togezile, and really good to hear some of the amazing work that the IISA is doing. And as a reminder, as Togezile has alluded to, a CPD, that deadline is approaching fast. It is the 31st of May. So do make sure that you bag all your CPD points. This session, as a reminder as well, has been accredited by the IISA for 2.5 CPD hours. All right, now on to the next speaker. His name is Francois de Vet. He is an industrial psychologist and also leading the tech startup at Wamley. Francois believes in disrupting and revolutionizing the world of recruitment. I mean, surely we cannot be hiring the same way we used to. So looking forward to this one, and without any further ado, it's over to you, Francois.
Good morning, everybody. It's a big privilege and a pleasure to be here with you. As mentioned, my name is Francois. I'm an industrial psychologist, and I am part of a tech startup called Wamley. I'm very excited to speak to you today about this topic around hiring in a remote world. And I'm going to do that with some insights and some client case studies of ours. And I really hope to leave you today with some thoughts around your own current recruitment processes and how you can adapt in this ever-evolving and changing world that we now find ourselves in. So in terms of the conversation flow, what I will share with you today is some context. So firstly, what has impacted our current reality? What are we seeing happening now? And what can you learn from that? Secondly, a possible approach. So what can you be focusing on in terms of your own hiring processes and why? And then lastly, I'd like to share with you how you can enable your own journey when considering hiring in a remote world. As mentioned, the idea really is to leave you with some thoughts, ask some key questions, and then potentially at the end of the conversation, have a nice Q&A where I'm very happy to answer any questions. So the context, what has impacted our current reality? We've seen shifts in talent trends. If we consider our clients, there is a typical overarching people strategy. So one, to have the access to the right skills and talent pools. Two, to have employees that are engaged and that you are able to retain your talent within your business. And this we've seen even before COVID-19 as shifts in the talent landscape. So what are we seeing? Firstly, candidates are consumers. So candidates have increasingly more choice. We're seeing that candidates' experience matters more than ever before and that they have a voice. So when considering your candidates, they're not just employees, but actually are consumers of your products. Careers are becoming more and more personal. So employees are seeking meaning, and we're seeing this across the research on millennials as well. Employees want to be engaged. They want to build a career. They want to understand how they are contributing to the bottom line, irrespective of where they fit in your organization. And that careers happen in multiple settings, especially with digitization and the ever decreasing size of the world of work due to technology. And then also our interactions with the world. So everything is on demand and at our fingertips. The world is becoming more digital and connected, and COVID has really highlighted that. So we are interacting intuitively with technology every single day. Just look at this conference we're on now, over almost 1,000 delegates, and we're doing it seamlessly on Zoom. Together with that, we obviously had COVID last year as a reality, and we're still sitting, and tomorrow's our year anniversary for those of you who didn't know. I think it's the year calendar, and then the day after that is the actual year anniversary of COVID. So guys, we've managed to survive 365 days of this new world of work. So in light of COVID, what are the two major impacts in the talent landscape that we've seen? So firstly, it highlighted gaps and the disjointedness between organizational practices and how the world has evolved. So basically, have we kept up or not? And we saw this clearly last year with policies, with technology in place, working from home, people's connectivity, internet, speed, devices, the way you organize your calendar, meetings. And then secondly, COVID really disrupted talent pools and your access to skills. And this is due to high unemployment rates, remote working. We had to rapidly reskill ourselves. And how do you access the passive talent? So we sit with a problem. Recruiting great people sucks. People are the building blocks of every organization. We know this. They are the hearts, the minds, the hands. The problem is finding talent, because there is a war for talent, now more so than ever. Based on some research from LinkedIn, we're seeing that only 30% of organizations are able to fill a vacancy within 30 days. The other 70% of companies take up to 4 months. And so one of my questions to you is how long does it take you to hire? And according to PwC, organizations in South Africa spend an average of 57,000 in screening costs just to fill a vacant position. So again, a question to you, what are you spending to fill a vacancy? So in 2021, why are we still interviewing like it's 1986? I guess that's the question. So what is a proposed approach? What can you be focusing on and why? So I want you to ask yourself these questions. Do applicants know your brand? So are they aware of the organization? Are they seeing it on social media? Do they know when they hear the label what this organization is, what it does, what it stands for? What is your EVP? Secondly, in the hiring process, do you provide timeless feedback? Or do candidates apply and they get lost in the numbers and they need to contact you and ask you, hey, did you get my CV? Did you get my interview? What do you think? Closing the loop, giving that feedback. Did you articulate the job well? So from a job profile, a job ad perspective, are the requirements of the role, those factors that will predict success, are they articulated so that candidates clearly understand what they are applying for? And is your time to hire taking up enormous amounts of time? And I can almost guarantee you that the answer to that question is going to be yes. The time to hire in a traditional process is really long. And we'll talk about some of those reasons in a moment. So by reviewing these questions, I think there are 3 areas that one can consider to remain relevant and sustainable. Your brand. What is the experience of the potential employee or the candidate applying, as well as how are you digitizing your process? Okay, I want to dive into the digitization now. So digitization in the way you acquire and attract your talent. So the first question I want to ask you is, how can you reach your talent? So what channels are you using? What platforms are you using? Do you have an applicant tracking system? Are you making use of an HRIS system? Various job boards, social media? We're seeing that these channels and platforms are so integrated and that talent, especially the millennials, are across these portals. So one needs to consider if the way I recruited in the past is going to be relevant and applicable to the way I need to recruit now in 2021. Second question is, how do you bring talent on board? And so from the attraction component, getting them to apply, their experience through that process, how is that? How are you doing that? And then how do you screen and select talent? So traditionally, most organizations will go from a CV to a phone call, face-to-face or Zoom interview. And the question—
I didn't catch that. Could you try again?
So Siri is talking to me. And the question really is, how can you now look at your potential screening and selection processes moving forward? How can you optimize that? How can you digitize that? The good news is you can. And I'd like to share some ways to do that. So first, when considering the right solution for digitizing your screening and selection methods, here are some ideas to think about. Firstly, cost effectiveness. Secondly, ease of use from a candidate's perspective as well as the organization, HR line managers. Is the method you are picking or choosing fit for purpose? Because we know that roles differ, complexities differ. Your possible talent out there, the talent pool you're working with, might be scarce or in abundance. Does your method allow for good reporting and data functionality, to do trends analysis, to look back, to review your process? Mobile compatibility, we understand now that everybody's on mobile. So is the screening and selection method you are using compatible with mobile? Together with mobile, we need to consider internet and bandwidth, especially in South Africa. And then of course, the candidate's experience. Is it an enjoyable process for them to apply? Or is it a tedious, long process where at step 7 or step 8, you get feedback that the candidate has taken another job? So these are some of the considerations that you can go through when deciding on a potential screening and selection method. I'd like to share a client's example with you around what they did. And the consideration to this approach was based on, of course, the level of the role. So was it high up in the organization or an entry-level position? Scarcity of the skill in the market. If you're only sitting with 1 or 2 individuals with a specific skill, you can't have a long, boring process to recruit people. They are in high demand, and before you know it, they've been taken by someone else. Consider your candidate's experience, the volumes of the applicants. We understand and know that many HR departments are spending enormous amount of time working through CVs. The impact of your selection decision. So the higher up you go in the organization, the higher the impact of the selection decision. And so what is your process in terms of the level that you are recruiting on? And then creating an end-to-end process where all the criteria of what predicts success in the role is taken into consideration when making your final selection decision, weighing candidates matched to the requirements of the position as well as the fit against each other. And so on the right-hand side of the slide, you can see a typical approach of some of the clients. So at the bottom, you have AI-assisted interview technology in the market. There are asynchronous or one-way interview solutions, which is Wamley, the organization that we're building. You have two-way interview options like Zoom and Teams and Slack. And then, of course, your face-to-face interview. And again, depending on where you are in your process, the higher up you go, the high touch, the more high touch it becomes, the lower down you go, the more tech it could be. What we're proposing and what I'm saying today is that it's not a one-size-fits-all approach, but being able to leverage technology across the organization, depending on the position you're at, depending on the amount of candidates applying, is really important to consider. Okay. So with that being said, why does video interviewing work? So firstly, video interviewing allows you to take back office hours. If I could interact with you, if this was a stage, I'd ask the question, how many hours have you spent in a face-to-face interview and within a couple of minutes, you know that this candidate is probably not a good fit, they're not going to make it, but you have to sit through that entire interview. And we've seen, being on Zoom and Teams, and I heard this morning that some organizations are now introducing a Zoom-free Friday because of Zoom fatigue, that even on Zoom, you are sitting in one interview after the other, spending enormous amounts of time. Video interview software also allows you to see more candidates in less time because you can click, pause, and hit next. The video is recorded, it gets sent back to raters. Raters will in their own time go in, watch the videos, and you are able to navigate through many videos in less time than you would do in face-to-face interviews. You can collaborate with your team, and so the software allows you to make comments, to rate, to move candidates around, to have interactive conversations, and video interview software is also allowing you to get the answers that you need. So you will set up the questions up front, the questions will go to the candidate, the webcam will activate, and they will only answer the questions that you are asking, which again reduces time, and you get to know the real person behind the CV. So as I mentioned, some other advantages of video interview is that you can also review in your own time. There's no need to travel. There's no need to get everybody in the same room from a line manager as well as a candidate perspective, and you are forcing concise answers. So really what we're saying is, when you think of digitization and digitizing your recruitment and selection process, video interviews can be a great solution. It happens anytime, anywhere. You build an archive of data, a database, a talent pool that you can review, especially if you're recruiting for the same positions every month. You can go back into your database, go and review those videos. Of course, the candidates will give consent across the providers out there. This is standard. And so those videos can be reused, and you can show them and move them in terms of a talent mobility perspective in your organization. And it allows you to see more candidates. So I'd like to end off by saying that video interviewing as part of digitizing your recruitment process really allows you to get the answers that you need, especially in this war for talent, especially in times like these that we're living in now, the new world, the remote world of work. The video software out there, such as Wamley, HireView, Spark Hire, RecRite, My Interview, those are 4, 5, 6 of the organizations that we are seeing globally now really getting traction because of where we are at and the context that we see with ourselves in. So guys, I want to leave you with this. Video interviewing is better than Zoom. You get notified, you can rate and comment, and it's really an interactive way to optimize and create a more efficient process. See, we have 10 minutes left. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to stop sharing and I will take any questions. Okay, Colin, that's a good question. How willing are the candidates to actually make the videos? Colin, it all depends on the nature of the position and the scarcity and the demand for that vacancy. Typically, the lower down you go in the organization, the more applicants there are out there, the more desperate they are for work. So again, then we just need to check the device and access to internet. But at Wamley, we're doing 1,000 interviews a week currently across our clients, and we are not seeing that much hesitation or pushback in terms of doing and going through the process. The technology also socializes the experience. So we do a lot of work up front to kind of introduce the concept. It is new, especially in South Africa and in the African continent. The concept is new. And so there's a lot of work that we need to do as thought leaders around educating potential candidates around what this is, how does it work. And so the software does a lot of that facilitation. Anushka, how much would a program like ours cost? I'm very happy to share my details and take you through the pricing. Most of the providers out there work on a subscription, and so you buy a license depending on your vacancies, your users, and the amount of interviews that you want. Great presentation, Anel. We're actually in the process of interviews and the topic came up. We'll definitely keep this in mind. Thank you, Anel. Please do not hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you, Una. Does it use a lot of data? That's an excellent question, Surin. So typically about 200 meg would be more than enough. Again, it all depends on two factors: how many questions you have in your interview guide and the camera of the device the candidate is using. So that would influence the data, but we're really trying to optimize it. I think it's one of the advantages of being a local provider is we understand the context. And so, of course, we're trying to optimize it. Some of our clients are also engaging from a CSI perspective to set up interview hotspots, interview cafes, Wi-Fi zones for candidates who don't have access to internet to go and do the video interviews there. Steve, at high level hires, how do you think the biometric assessments apply? Steve, in any recruitment and selection process, I believe it should not be a one size fits all approach off the shelf. I think you should tailor your approach across. So the lower down you go, as I had that one picture, the more tech you can apply, the higher up you go. It all depends on the requirements of the position. We see something like cognitive ability as part of an assessment process measure also coming through quite often. And then the conversation is, the higher up you go, do you need to assess cognitive ability, or is it more experience and influence that contributes to being successful in the position? So I guess it all depends on the role, it all depends on the context, and it all depends on the type of individual you're working with. Okay, guys, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for taking time. Vanessa, I'm going to answer the very last question and then I have to run. What is the success rate for getting the right talent required by the companies doing video interviews to date for positions? Vanessa, I'm going to drop my mail in here and then maybe you can reach out to me. That's not a quick answer, but I'm very happy to answer you. Thank you very much, guys.
Francois, thank you so much. What an interesting presentation. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and it really goes to show that a big mind shift needs to happen in the recruitment world. It's also evident from the questions that have come through in the Q&A portal. So thank you so much for that. Our next segment now is the entertainment. We've decided to be a little bit spicy and introduce a cooking demonstration from So Yum restaurant in Hyde Park. They're going to leave you mouth-watering. I hope you enjoy it. And without any further ado, it's over to you, So Yum.
Good morning, InsureTalk attendees. Welcome to a little masterclass cooking session here. I'm Gary from So Yum Restaurant in Hyde Park, and I'm going to teach you how to make a Thai green curry. Firstly, because it's incredibly easy, and secondly, because winter's going to come up. Right, ingredients you're going to need is a coconut milk. It needs to be a good quality coconut milk. We prefer the brand Chokra. It needs to be at least 17% fat, otherwise it becomes very, very runny. Then you need a good fish sauce for salty flavors. If you don't want fish sauce and you prefer something a little bit more vegan, you can have a look at natural soya sauce or mushroom soya sauce. Then you can use dried galangal, which we prefer to use, but if you cannot get this at your local store, you can just use a classic fresh ginger, but you will use a little less of the fresh ginger because the galangal is a lot more subtle than fresh ginger. Then your Thai dry lime leaves, or you can use fresh lime leaves. Once again, fresh lime leaves, you'll use slightly less than the classic dry lime leaves. Right, with this recipe, you can either use green curry paste, which I'm going to do today. You can substitute the exact same amount for the red curry paste. And if you are vegan, you can use the Buddhist yellow curry paste. The red and green curry paste does unfortunately contain shrimp paste and a bit of shrimp sauce in the actual paste itself. And that's what your pastes look like. All right, shall we get started? Firstly, you will need 1 full tin of the coconut milk. We'll pour that in. I've already got that going on the burner over here. Then you'll do literally 1 lime leaf. Some of the galangal, you don't need to use such a big piece. You'll snap that in half. I'm making for 2 today. Little piece like that. Pop that in. Then instead of sugar, we are going to use palm sugar made from the palm tree. A lot better than the classic white sugar. You're welcome to use xylitol if you can't find palm sugar, or you're welcome to use white sugar. A little teaspoon of that, pop that in. Then you're going to use a tablespoon, a nice healthy dose tablespoon of the green curry paste. Those are all your sauce ingredients. Very easy. You pop that on the boil, Get it boiling. Once it's boiling, let it simmer for 1 hour and you just leave it and let it go. Once your sauce is done and finished, it has to have a nice creamy consistency. If it hasn't, boil it for, let it simmer for a little bit longer. Then we are going to add our fresh vegetables. Now you can pretty much do anything you like here. At the restaurant, we prefer to use the patty pans. Because of the heat of the curry, the patty pans has got a liquid in it. So when you bite the patty pan, it shoots a little bit of white liquid in your mouth, which softens the spice. So you just pop these rough. If you prefer to do it fine, you're welcome to do so. I use the red and the green ones. Just adds a little bit of extra color. Red peppers, green peppers. Garden peas is also one of my favorites to use in these, but we don't use that in the restaurant. Excellent. You pop that on a medium pan in the sauce, boil for another 15-20 minutes. Once it's ready, then you will add whatever protein you prefer. Today I'm making a chicken. I've pre-boiled the chicken. You'll just take a handful of that or however much you need, pop it in and off you go. You're welcome to do prawns, mixed seafood, vegetables, mushrooms. And you will keep that sealed while you're cooking it. You don't want that sauce to reduce anymore, otherwise your sauce will go very, very salty. If your sauce does go slightly salty, all you do, add a little bit of extra of the coconut milk in, and you're good to go. Once we are finished, I have a finished green curry over here. You're going to take some basil leaves, garnish it, and off you go. The sauce, as I described it now, will be medium in strength. If you need it milder, add a little bit of coconut milk into it. It'll soften the blow of the chili. Once again, if you'd like it hotter, add some more chili. And if you'd like it Thai-style hot, which is lethal, load it with chili. Thank you for joining us today. Please come and join us at So Yum. Don't cook at home. Nobody does that. Come and join us and eat with us. Stay safe over the Corona period and have a fantastic Easter.
Chef Gary from So Yum. That Thai green curry looked absolutely delicious and simple to make. And it doesn't help that the weather here in Joburg does allow. So hopefully some of you will be trying this a little bit later on. So thank you for that demonstration. Our next speaker is Almira Oosthuizen from Easy Equities. He is the VP of Business Development there. He will be unpacking some of the findings from the Easy Equities insurance survey that was done. So over to you, Almira Oosthuizen.
Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Almira Oosthuizen. I am the VP of Business Development, Products and UX at Easy Equities. And I wanted to take this time just to give you a little bit of insights into the insurance survey that we conducted to our customer base in February. Just a quick introduction to Easy Equities, who we are for the people that don't know. Easy Equities is an online investment platform that makes it easy, fun, and engaging for people to start investing in the stock market. It's a digital platform that gives you access to stocks available in the JSE, in the US and in Australia, and soon other markets across Europe and Asia as well. So 90% or 95% of our customers are first-time investors. So we try and take the intimidation out of investments and create a friendly environment for people to start growing their wealth. So a quick introduction to Easy Equities. And then you might ask why Easy Equities is looking at insurance. So one of the things that we've specifically looked at is life insurance, because we strongly believe that life cover is essentially the cover that you take out for the shortfall on your assets. And what we're trying to do inside Easy Equities is to enable people to grow their assets and wealth, and ultimately reduce the dependence on life cover. And in an ideal world, I guess, all of us would like to have sufficient assets that we ultimately don't have a reliance potentially on life cover. But why, until that happens, life cover is essential and a critical part of financial freedom. So and this is actually driven from our customers. So everything that we try and create and products that we develop within Easy Equities, we create and develop as a result of requests from our customers. So insurance was definitely something that came to the forefront of our development cycle as a result of our customers bringing it to our attention, and asking us to look at alternative ways of delivering insurance products. So coupled with that, what we also do is, yes, there might be a few customers that highlight that and bring it under our attention. And then what we often do is we conduct a survey to our customer base. We've got a very engaging customer base, and they like to give us a good feedback. And we have become a fairly trusted brand within the financial services space. We've got just over 800,000 customers now on our platform, and we really love the way that our customers engage with us. And this survey was a testament of this engagement again. So I'm just going to share my screen to give you just some of the highlights out of the survey, which should be quite interesting for the industry as well. So just to start off with the survey, we conducted the survey in February of this year. We sent it to 136,000 of our customers, and we had 40,485 responses on the survey, which is, I mean, for people that run surveys, you'll know that a response rate of 30% is unheard of. So we're very lucky in that regard that our customers engage with us so actively, and they provide us with really valuable feedback when we try and survey them and get a sense of what the requirements is within our base. So within the base, so the people that actually completed the survey, the age demographic of our customer base, and this looks very much like the Easy Equities customer base. The majority of our customers sits within that millennial segment between 25 and 34-year-olds. And they seem to be very engaging. These customers log in multiple times a day to our platform, and they make small incremental investments as they go along and sort of building their wealth and their investment journey. There's also, so what we believe and why we think also insurance could be a space where our current data information about our customers could play a role. So we've aggregated a lot of information around customer behavior when it comes to specifically investments. And we believe that by augmenting that data and coupling it with traditional data that insurance providers use to adequately assess risk, we can potentially, by adding our data, provide a service offering that could lower the cost traditionally that a user would experience with taking out a policy because of the additional knowledge that we have on these customers. So firstly, what we wanted to do is we wanted to get a sense of what kind of insurance products these customers are currently buying. And as you can see, these are fairly obvious. What wasn't that obvious to us was that life insurance made up 44% of the responses added life insurance as an insurance product what they currently engage with. And considering the age demographic of the actual segment that we surveyed, this seemed quite high. You'd imagine that people start thinking about life insurance later in life, beyond 35. But it seems like our customers actually are starting to look at life fairly early in their life cycle. Some of the smaller ones, I mean, there's obviously pet insurance there. Car insurance is still fairly high, 46%. And then health probably ranking third there at around 35%. Then we also asked our customers on how they prefer buying the insurance. So the majority said that they like buying insurance through the internet. And then very close second was face-to-face meeting with the advisor or broker. Over the phone also seemed quite high, but I think also because of the demographic of the customer and the responses, these millennials more willing to engage through digital channels. And in fact, often they prefer engaging through digital channels. So our platform is set up fairly adequately to engage on a digital way. And we see that on a daily basis and how people engage with their investments through our platform. And then which sources of information do you use when choosing an insurance provider? Now, friends and family is by far the biggest source, so 55%. 45% said internet or online aggregators, and what was quite low was television and radio ads. I guess more the traditional players that play in that space use those channels as brand awareness and a form of trust and credibility. But clearly it doesn't really sway a person's sort of inclination to buy your product. It might be top of mind actually, but the strongest form of engagement is through friends and family and recommendations. And I think maybe a lesson there for us was that if you are going to use a marketing strategy to convert customers into your product, then reward your customers specifically and engage them. And create incentives around your customer to recommend friends and family. So within Easy Equities, we actually do that relatively well. So almost 60% of our customers come to us as a result of referrals. So we have a very small marketing budget. The money that we do spend on marketing, predominantly we spend on our customers, so incentivizing our customers to bring us new customers. So yeah, that's maybe a lesson also out of this question, was that a good place to spend your marketing money is on your actual customer and trying to get your customer to engage additional friends and family and new customers. And that becomes really a great way to acquire additional customers. Then we looked at which insurance provider do you currently use? And this was across all insurance providers. Obviously, we didn't list all the insurance providers in this space, but the ones that stood out here was Discovery. 24% of our customers actually said that they Discovery customers. And then second was Outsurance. And then there was a fairly even spread across some of the other providers in the space. But yeah, so that was quite a standout for us as well, that a lot of our customers are already engaging with Discovery and Outsurance for their insurance products. Then the next question, we looked at, are you satisfied or dissatisfied with your current insurance provider? And this was also quite a telling answer for us, because if you look at the answers here, almost 80% of customers are either very satisfied or satisfied with their current service providers or insurance providers. And that's a little bit scary for someone that wants to potentially start playing in this space, because to get someone to convert to a new provider looks like it is really hard. The majority of customers are happy with the services and products that's provided by the existing incumbent players. So it'll have to take something substantially different and really good to dissuade these customers from or get them to change service providers. And this is, I guess, a testament to the industry. A tiny percent, less than 5% of people are dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with their products. So that's sort of definitely some kudos for the industry that you asked, that the industry is really servicing their customers really well. And this was also sort of speak to the previous slide as well. If you were offered a solution that potentially better suit your needs, how likely are you to continue using your current insurance provider in the future? And again, the majority of customers said that they are either extremely likely, quite likely, or moderate likely to maintain their relationship with their existing provider. So again, if you are someone that's trying to steal market share from your competitors, this is not going to be an easy job. You're going to have to come up with something substantially different and a unique product offering to enable you to acquire additional customers or steal from your competitors. What are your top considerations for choosing a life insurance product? Yes, we specifically actually looked at life insurance. And affordability obviously stood out, 67%. And this is where we think we could potentially play a role because of the additional data that we possess over a customer and a customer's behavior. Some of the others were reputation of the financial institution. 43% selected that option. And another one that's sort of more specific to us is linked to an investment portfolio. So if your insurance policy could be linked to investment portfolio and be asset aware, 20% of people said that that's something that they would consider or would like to have as a consideration. Do you see insurance as an essential aspect of financial freedom, and does it complement what we as Easy Equities offer you? So yeah, I mean, more than close to 85% of people said yes, that they do see it as an aspect of financial freedom, which was encouraging for us, and they also see it as something that could be complement Easy Equities, the Easy Equities are offering. So this is slightly more selfish towards us as a product provider, and I think that's proved to us that it is potentially something that might be relevant in our space down the line. Then we also, what we looked at is a lot of providers currently provide cashback incentives, and we also wanted to understand where customers would like that cashback to be placed. So if you can earn cashback every year on your monthly insurance contribution, how would you like to use it? And 78% said that let it automatically top up an investment goal that they've created in their Easy Equities account. So again, yes, this customer base has already got an investment mindset, but I think that's also something for the industry to potentially look at where they can provide the user with additional value, especially in the life space where I mentioned we believe that life is essentially a safety measure on the shortfall for your assets. So it makes sense that these cashback solutions could potentially be used to top up a investment portfolio of some sort. We also, one of the other questions we looked at is also how often customers would like to be incentive or get cash back. And I think we asked them if they would like monthly, quarterly, 6 monthly, or annually, and the majority, funny enough, said annually. I think people are scared of themselves in terms of when they get access to this cash back, they'll probably just spend it on meaningless things. So they probably want to hide it from themselves for a little bit. But that was also an interesting piece of insight. If Easy Equities had to add insurance to our product offering, which insurance product would you like to see us add? Yeah, it was quite a big spread between the different insurance products. Traditionally, financial service providers seem to play in this funeral cover space, and that didn't really come up that high, even though it was in the top 4. But what did stand out, which was positive for us, was life insurance was a big portion of the respondents actually selected life insurance as a potential product that we can add to our product space. So that was just, so I just wanted to share some interesting insights. Often I think one of the things that really stood out for me is how loyal customers are within the space, and how hard it would be for additional providers and players to potentially penetrate the space. But in saying that, I think there's definitely scope for changes within specifically life insurance, and that's where we think we could potentially play a role there in the future. Thanks very much. Any questions? I'm happy to answer some questions. Because someone wanted me to talk about Easy Equities a bit. Obviously, as I mentioned in the introduction of Easy Equities, so Easy Equities is really the one-stop shop for anyone that wants to start building wealth and creating financial freedom. As I mentioned initially, we don't discriminate. We really are a financial services provider that makes it easy for everyday South Africans to start investing, and hence why 95% of our customers are first-time investors. Has Bitcoin, so these are a few Easy Equities questions. Has Bitcoin growth affected Easy Equities investing? Actually, you can buy a crypto bundle on Easy Equities. So the fact that Bitcoin is sort of the flavor back in terms of the flavor of the month, Easy Equities does provide you access to cryptocurrencies. We've got a crypto bundle of the top 10 market weighted cryptocurrencies on the platform, which is probably safer to invest in as Bitcoin on its own. So yeah, no, not really. It doesn't really distract our customers from investing in more traditional products and equities. It's just they complement their investment portfolio with cryptocurrency. Someone asked about the connection between Easy Equities and Satrix. So Satrix, which is the ETF, one of the biggest South African ETF providers, Easy Equities is the platform capability behind the Satrix Now platform. So Satrix Now is a white label of the Easy Equities platform. Obviously, within the Satrix platform, there's only Satrix products that you can buy on that platform. But we've been partners for close to 4 years now, 4.5 years. With Satrix, and Sanlam, in fact, also has a 30% stake in Easy Equities as a business. So there's an equity partnership beyond just a service provider partnership there as well. Thanks. I think that sort of covers most of the questions. Yeah, happy to answer any additional questions if someone wants to reach out after. Otherwise, go check out easyequities.co.za. for more information about Easy Equities. It's really easy to set up an account. You can literally open an account within 5 minutes and start playing around. We've got a demo capability within Easy Equities as well. So if you don't want to use real money, you can also use your demo account just to start playing around and start your investment journey. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you so much, Almira, for that presentation. We really enjoyed it, and I see from the Q&A session that our attendees have enjoyed it too. We are now going to take a very short 2-minute comfort break. So go and make yourself a cup of coffee, have some water, and we will be back right after that with Tony Fanikak from Cover Magazine giving some updates over there. So 2-minute break, we'll be back shortly. Welcome back, everyone, and I hope that you're feeling refreshed. You've had your comfort break, grabbed your cup of coffee or water, and ready to get back right into it. Just a reminder that today CIB is our headline sponsor, and our other event partners, of course, include Munich Re, IISA, as well as Cover Magazine. All right, we're going to jump on over to our guest speaker now, Graham Codrington. He is a futurist, author, presenter, as well as the go-to resource for those leaders that are gearing up for the future. Graham is going to be speaking to us today about tomorrow's world today, the disruptive forces we're facing, and how we can respond to those. So without any further ado, it's over to you, Graham.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be with you today at this InsureTalk. On the anniversary, as it happens, a year later, I don't know what you were doing on Thursday, the last Thursday of March last year, as we scrambled to get ready for that 3-week lockdown that we were going into. It was crazy times in my house. We were actually moving house that week, if you can believe it. But here we are, and we are looking ahead now at tomorrow's world and what is going to happen in this world post-COVID, if there is even such a thing as post-COVID. As you can see, I'm not sharing my screen separately. I have got my slides behind me. And so just depending on how you've set up your screen, you might just need to shift things around in order to see me clearly. You might also prefer to get a copy of my slides so that you can have my slides, maybe even annotate them as we go along. If you'd like to do that right now, here's how to get them. So just go to that website as you see it there, all lowercase letters, gettalk.at/InsureTalk21. And while you're doing that, let me just say thank you again to the sponsors of this session, to CIB, and thank you very much for bringing me to InsureTalk this year. So, as I said, we are thinking about what the world is going to look like in the next few years, and let's call it the 2020s. Of course, COVID dominates our thinking at the moment. COVID itself has been a massive disruptor, of course, but I actually think that the bigger news, when we look back, in 2031, when we look back and our Facebook feed is giving us, remember where you were 10 years ago and we were sitting in lockdown. When we look back on the 2020s, I think we might say, well, COVID was an interesting start to the decade, but we might have almost forgotten it. I wonder if COVID will even be in the top 5 disruptors that we experience in the 2020s. I'm not being flippant about that, because I think what I'm already seeing is that COVID is not just a disruptor itself. COVID is actually accelerating many other disruptors that are in the system. And I think especially in the digital spaces, we are seeing companies that might have had plans to do things digitally, that kind of were plans that were scheduled for the next few years, and they've accelerated those plans dramatically. I mean, just here in South Africa, if we think about e-commerce and home delivery, it's been frustrating the last few years. I lived in London 10 years ago when kind of Amazon and e-commerce really took off in London. And it was amazing to do 24-hour deliveries. Moved back to South Africa 7 or 8 years ago and discovered that we hadn't quite got that delivery system in place yet. And it was both expensive and slow. Now we've changed that. We've changed that for restaurants. Checkers 6060, probably can't believe their luck. They started in December 2019 and they were prototyping and saying, I wonder how many people will need and want home deliveries of stuff from Checkers. So you've got this explosion. You've got an explosion of data to the home. We're seeing acceleration of trends. Probably my favorite example of this is Disney Plus. Right, so this is Disney's online streaming platform, the competition for Netflix and Showmax and others. Still not legally available in South Africa, coming soon, but I know a lot of people who know how to get it. Anyway, so Disney Plus is launched in September 2019. And they've got a 5-year plan. By 2024, they want to have 60 million subscribers at about $9 per month. 2 weeks ago, they released their latest subscriber figures. They have 100 million subscribers already, right? So they're basically getting in $1 billion a month. And that's now, so it's like 18 months in. They've updated their plans. By 2024, they want to have 250 million subscribers, 250 million subscribers. I think they're not being ambitious enough. I think they'll get to that level very, very soon. But that's not actually the point of my story. It goes further, because a few weeks ago when they made that announcement, they made another announcement. And what they said is everything Disney's ever done, every movie, every TV show they've ever done is going to be available now on the platform for $9 a month. You can watch them as many times as you like. More importantly, every single new product that they produce, every new movie, every new TV show, every new Star Wars series, that's the one that's got my attention, is going to be released onto Disney Plus first. Here's the point of the story. The entire ecosystem has just changed, because why would you go to the movie theaters? Why would you go and sit on a dirty seat in somebody else's stale popcorn, listening to the guy behind you have an argument with his girlfriend, the person in front of you answer a phone call, and get COVID from the person next to you? Why would you do that to yourself? And you'll pay like $200 per person for the one experience, and that's just for the popcorn. This changes everything. It changes an entire ecosystem, and it was accelerated by COVID. And I think we're going to see this in industry after industry. We need to expect more disruption, not less. The fourth industrial revolution, if you like that label or not, it's a bit of a cliche now, but if you prefer digital transformation or whatever language you prefer, all the stuff you've heard at every conference you've been to for the last 5 or 6 years, artificial intelligence, predictive data analytics, cryptocurrencies, blockchain, what else? Machine learning. The list goes on and on and on. None of that stuff has looked at us and said, I see you dealing with COVID. I'll come back another year. I think they've done the opposite. I think these things have said, I see you can handle disruption. Have some more. And I think that's where we are now. And it's going to impact the insurance industry, the financial services industry, as much as, in fact, more than most other industries, because many of your businesses, especially in insurance, are ripe for digital disruption, whether that's just in how you communicate and engage and connect with clients, whether it's how you do your internal processes, whether it's even how you make the decisions that typically have been the most expensive decisions in the insurance industry, because it's all the clever actuaries coming up with the risk profiles and so on. Wherever it is, I think anywhere you look in your industry, you've got digital revolution coming. And what I'm saying to you is it's going to come even faster. We could talk about other things as well. It's not just digital. We could talk about the shift in geopolitics that COVID is going to accelerate. Countries that have elections. Israel's in the middle of one right now. Germany's about to have one. America just had one. South Africa will have one later this year. I think voters are going to go into the voting booths with COVID on their minds. Not infected by COVID, it's not what I meant, but thinking about how did our government respond? Do we reward them or do we do something else? Economics is going to be impacted as companies and countries begin to look at supply chains and think about regionalization, and do they want to have a supply chain that can be impacted if we have another pandemic? And then we can just go back to the lists we've been talking about of deep disruptions, including climate change and shifts, I think all accelerated by COVID. So all of this to say one thing really, strap in, the 2020s are going to be one hell of a ride. It's not just a time of challenge with a bit of change and a shake-up in the system. It's not just a time where you can grit your teeth and get through it, and then hopefully it'll be over soon, and then we can get back to normal. I think we are at a moment in history. I think we are at the start of a decade that will have the most disruption in it of any decade, certainly in our lifetimes. It's a bold claim, but I might even say in recorded history. Honestly, I do believe that. I think this is a remarkable moment in history. If you want to put it positively, then let me frame it this way. I think in the insurance industry, real innovation in the 2020s is not going to be merely about innovative new products and services. It's not going to be about clever, what do the actuaries call it, wrappers to the stuff that you do. It's not going to be about your channels to market and so on. All of that stuff has to be done. You do have to be innovative. You do have to bring new products and services to the market. You do have to open up new markets and engage with the various new channels and multi-channel options and so on. You do have to do all of that. But everybody else is doing that too. I think the real innovation in the 2020s, brought about by all of these forces that I've listed, is going to be your ability to change your business model itself. So that's some big thoughts right there. What do you do then, right? What do you actually do? How do you respond then as a person in this industry, whether you're a leader or not, whether you're a business owner or not, wherever you find yourself? How do you respond? Well, what I could do now is spend the rest of the time I've got allocated giving you a list of all of the disruptive forces that are coming your way. And that'd be useful and a helpful list. I'd suggest Google if you want to do that. Just Google forces shaping insurance in the 2020s and you'll come up with some really great lists. I don't think that's the most helpful thing to do at this point, because I don't think that it's your knowledge of those forces, your knowledge of those things coming at you, that is going to be the differentiator between those who succeed and fail in the next 5 to 10 years. I think it's got to do with an adjustment in your mindset, with a shift in how you think about the world, your industry, and your role in it. So I want to suggest 3 mindset shifts for you today that will help you to respond. The first is, I think that we need to overcome inattentional blindness. Okay, some of you need to hear that again, because what? You need to overcome a problem. The problem is inattentional, not unintentional or intentional. It's about your attention. What takes your attention? What gets your focus? And what are you blind to? What is it that you can't see? So I'm deliberately messing with words there because I'm also trying to prove a point about how much attention we give things. We live in a world at the moment where our attention is just so scattered. The digital world has actually made things worse for us because we've got a constant stream of text. I mean, even as I present to you now, I've got these on a separate screen. I've got the chat group going with the panelists. You can, chat into that and those can come through to me. I've got a WhatsApp group in the background to just make sure everything's working. But then because I've got WhatsApp open, my family's WhatsApping me. And the next client I'm speaking to is WhatsApping me. And I haven't even opened my emails today yet. And forget about social media. So it's a problem that we're going to have to fix and solve. But it's more than just that big systems problem. It's literally your problem as well. I want to prove something to you. Please make sure you can watch your screen, right? Please make sure that you can focus on your screen. Because in a moment, I'm going to start a little optical illusion here for you. This illusion has got a green dot and some yellow dots. And I'm going to ask you to focus in a moment, not now, focus on the green dot. And what's going to happen is that the yellow dots are going to start flashing and then they're going to disappear. Now, we're not set up in this conference for you to shout out when the yellow dots start flashing and when the yellow dots disappear. I would have loved to have done that when I do this in a live event, or I do it in an environment where we can switch on microphones and get a little bit of chaos going at this stage. But I want you to just time yourself. And in fact, let me start this now. So are you staring at the screen? I need you to stare at the green dot. Sorry, just give me a second here to just get this going properly and just get this set up. So you'll see as the screen has, it's just paused for a second. I'm just going to have to restart it here. Right, here we go. You'll see that the green dot is flashing. Stare at the green dot. Give that green dot every little bit of focus you can possibly give it. Do not stop staring at that green dot. And probably about now, 1 or 2 of the yellow dots started flashing. Keep staring at the green dot. Don't ignore the yellow dots. Just stare at the green dot. Stare at the green dot. Flashing, flashing, flashing. For me, disappear now. I'm going to just leave that for a second. Just keep staring. Just keep staring. Now, for most of you, that's worked. For about 10% of you, you don't know what we're talking about, okay? Because it hasn't worked. But for about 90% of us, those yellow dots started flashing. But as you look at that now, you realize those yellow dots never moved, right? They never disappeared. They didn't even move. How did that even happen, right? What's going on in your brain? And literally, I can do this. I know this illusion. I know that the yellow dots never disappear. But what happens is when you say to your brain, focus on the green dot, your brain says, okay, I've got you. I can see what you need me to do, and I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to focus on the green dot. And you know what? You don't need all of this other information. Okay, so a few of you, you're commenting now, and you're saying, yeah, you disappeared, flashing, flashing. 1 or 2 of you are saying, so is it Il Dilco? Okay. Now, you might be wondering, what's happening with you? Is this a good thing or a bad thing that it didn't work for you? Well, the answer is we don't know. It could be a sign of super intelligence, that your brain is able to keep all of that information, Idilka, and share all of that information with you. And it could be a sign that you've got massive monster brain capacity. It could also be a sign that your brain doesn't know how to function properly because your brain is supposed to filter information for you. It could be that your brain doesn't have filters. And it's not about intelligence, it's just about filters. We actually, practically, we don't know. What we do know is that it's called confirmation bias. Your brain has 2 primary drivers. If you'd prefer me to say this is how your brain was created, I'll happily give you that. If you prefer to say this is what's evolved over millennia for our brains to work, you make your choice of where you think this comes from. But there is no doubt that our brains are programmed with 2 very powerful algorithms. The first algorithm is to prove that what you already believe is correct. In other words, your brain is constantly attempting to gather proof that what you already believe is true and reject anything that you don't already believe. Makes it very difficult to learn new stuff. Makes it very difficult to change your beliefs because your brain will literally reject stuff. It will literally stop showing you things. You will literally read a magazine and honestly, they've shown that this can happen. You will flick over the article, you'll skip the paragraph that is the proof that you're wrong, because your brain is always attempting to prove that what you already believe is right. And the second thing your brain is trying to do is the least amount of work possible. I kind of like my brain for that. Brains are lazy things. If you want the science behind this, read Daniel Kahneman, Nobel Prize winning work, Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Easy, short read, change your life. But it is remarkable. that our brains are programmed to believe what we already believe and to do as little work as possible beyond that. I mean, that's a horrible thing to say. I mean, I consider myself a very intelligent, curious person who takes note of the world around me and is interested in learning. But I stare at the green dot, and within a few seconds, my brain says, I see you focused on the green dot. You don't need to see the yellow dots anymore. Boom, and they disappear, even though I know the illusion. And I'm talking about it to people. This is a problem, isn't it? Because the more experience you've got in the insurance industry, the more expertise you have. So you've studied, you've worked hard, you've been promoted through the system, you're good at what you do. But the more expertise and experience you've got, the less likely you are to see the disruptors that are coming. The more likely you are to be in a space where the way it's always been done is the best way to do it. Think about that one for a moment as you think about, hey, should we go back to the office? Or what does the workplace look like a year from now? Or what does insurance look like a few years from now? So the first thing we have to do is overcome confirmation bias. You can't beat it, so you have to just accept that it's there and put in place systems that will help you to continually challenge yourself and your team. So that's the first thing you need to do. The second thing that you need to do is entertain ridiculous ideas. We are very, very good at building plans and targets and budgets. So whenever you go through your annual planning process, what do? Well, you start with what you've already got. And if somebody comes up with a super crazy idea, most of your companies are built to shut that down. And I'm using a very particular word. It comes from Professor Jim Data, who I think is the world's leading academic futurist. He's professor of future studies at Hawaii University. And his second law of futures, which is what any futurist who studies at a future studies department at a university, we've got one at Stellenbosch Business School, at Stellenbosch University, the Institute for the Future, or for Future Studies, and you'll study Jim Data's laws of the future. And any useful idea about the future must appear ridiculous. Why? And it's an interesting statement. To make it more useful and valuable to you, let me add two words. Any useful idea about the future must appear ridiculous at first, because it must push your brain. It must force you out of your confirmation bias. It must force you. So, for example, I could say to you, we will have driverless cars in the future. And you'll go, yeah, okay, sure, we will. I haven't pushed any boundaries for you. I haven't got you to think differently about the world. What if I told you that I thought that within the next 15 years, driverless cars would be compulsory? That my grandchildren will never drive a car. Like, I'm never going to ride a carriage anywhere. I mean, just carriages are something from the past. They're from history. And if I do ride in a carriage, there will be a professional carriage driver, and it'll be this like weird, odd experience I've created for myself. I will never drive a carriage. My grandchildren will never drive a car. It will be illegal, because if every car is driverless, then every car can speak to every other car. And when you've got a system of driverless cars, you increase traffic flow and the efficiency of traffic flow by 72%. MIT studies prove this. And you increase safety by 96%. So why wouldn't we want to create a system of driverless cars? And why would you put a crazy lunatic human being driver into the middle of that system who could mess it all up for you, because they're not in that ecosystem? By the way, if you're in insurance, that's kind of does it for you in short-term insurance for cars. Because if 96% of all traffic accidents disappear, the risk profile of the industry is entirely different. And if nobody's driving the cars, well, then who is insured? How is it insured? That's not a 2050, 2060 conversation. That's not a conversation for 40 years in the future. That's a conversation that you've got to have by the end of this decade, because that's how quickly it's going to change when it does. So am I being ridiculous when I share that idea? Yeah, I hope so. But I hope that when you think about it again, you realize, well, maybe not that ridiculous. Let me give you another idea, right? I think that most of the people who are alive today, more than half of all the people who are alive in the world today, will reach their 100th birthdays. That's a crazy claim. But let me give you a fact. Half of all the people who have ever turned 80 in the history of the world, half of all the people who've ever turned 80 are still alive. So I don't think it's ridiculous that it's going to extend just a little bit further. I was born in 1970. I'm 50 this year. And I would love to see the next century. I'd love to get to 130. Not all with original parts. That's not going to happen. I'm going to need some replacement parts and probably some machine integration. I think that's possible. I think that's what the second half of this century holds for us. Human hybrid integration with machines, life expectancy dramatically increasing, with 100 years being easy to connect with. Now, some of you are thinking, that feels like it is a horrible thought. I don't want to get old. I don't want to be, I don't want to be 100. Your confirmation bias is kicking in again, right? Because what you are not thinking about is about being younger longer. Your confirmation bias is saying, well, after the age of 70 or so, it's all downhill from there. And who wants to then be old for another 70 years? Nobody, of course not. But if you can be younger longer, if this is what 100 looks like, count me in. Right, are the life insurers listening yet? Because what does life insurance look like? Are the retirement guys listening yet? Because how on earth are you going to retire at the age of 60 and then think you can live on your annuity income for the next 60 years? It's not magic. Your industry provides some assistance for people, but it's not a magic. You don't have a money tree somewhere that you can just keep paying out to people no matter how long they live. This changes the world, doesn't it? Jim Data went further. Any useful idea about the future must appear ridiculous at first. Not every ridiculous idea is useful. In other words, yes, some people are going to come up with crazy ideas. Somebody's going to say something like, boom, let's do this. And you're going to think about it and say, no, that is not just ridiculous. It is also useless and ridiculous. But if you never give yourself the opportunity to have ridiculous ideas, if you don't build this type of thinking, looking backwards from the future, looking at massively disruptive forces, if you don't allow yourself moments in your life, in your year, in your team's rhythm, if you don't allow yourself opportunities to be ridiculous, the future is going to be a very, very surprising place for you. And it's surprises are fantastic on birthdays and at Christmas or wherever you give people gifts and surprises. Surprise is really not a good business strategy. So the third thing that you need to do is you need to have some kind of framework or model to help you think about the future, to help you think about these disruptive forces coming our way. Now, we could spend the rest of the day, the rest of this conference, unpacking the model that our team has developed called the TIDES model of disruptive change. TIDES is clearly an acronym, and here's what it stands for. 5 forces that we believe are the most disruptive forces shaping our world right now and in the near future. Technology, obvious place to start. Institutional change is about the changes in the rules for success and failure. What are the rules that govern your industry? Now, some of those are regulations, and regulations might change. Think of how regulations have had to change around health insurance and life insurance around COVID. Massive, very quick regulatory change, just an example. But it's also the informal rules for success and failure. One of my favorite examples here is FNB, right? When they created that little open a bank account in 30 seconds using a selfie thing. I don't know if any of you did that. But basically, there's a rule that says it takes you a day or two to open a bank account, and you have to go into a branch. There's a whole lot of stuff you have to do. There's a whole lot of paperwork you have to sign. Does it sound familiar? And what happens if we just change those rules? What happens if we say to somebody, you can just take a selfie on your phone, put it into the app. If we can pick up your facial recognition using the biometric databases that the banks have access to because they help us print ID cards and passports, clever when you know what you're doing. If we can verify your identity through your selfie, we'll open a bank account for you in 30 seconds. That's what I mean by institutional change, structural change to the rules for success and failure. And when a disruptor comes into your industry, they change all the rules. Now, you know that I speak for a living, and because I speak on change, I am legally obligated to mention Uber, Airbnb, and Netflix. So now I've done it. Those are examples, right? Yeah, they're cliche examples, but they're still good examples. Here's maybe a better way to do it. If you opened up the newspaper tomorrow morning, the insurance newspaper, the Journal of Insurance Studies for Southern Africa, and the headline was 26th of March, 2021, Apple has entered your market. What would that do? Google has entered your market. Google, Apple are now selling insurance. That's when institutional change happens, because they're not going to come in to compete with you. They're not interested in doing a slightly better job at a slightly lower fee, slightly faster than you're doing it. If they're coming into your market, they're coming in because they've worked out a way to do it totally differently. Should freak you out. That's institutional change. Demographics, that's like the 100-year life, when people get married, how many children they have, and so on. The environment, I think that speaks for itself. Natural resources, use of the environment. And social values, I think, is one of the most powerful things to have to consider and think about, because it's what people believe. It's what people desire. It's where the hashtags come from. It's kind of like hashtags territory. It's what people are passionate about and the causes that they stand for. And yeah, if we are not tracking social values, we might have all of the technology, we might have the regulators in line, we might know the markets we're entering, and then people say, but we don't want your stuff, or we don't want it from you, because there's a values mismatch. So if that's useful, if that's helpful, that's a model. You can go to my YouTube channel. I'll give you the link in a second. I've given a more detailed introduction and shown people how to use the Tides model in their businesses. What I'm just saying is that in an environment, the insurance environment, where the main product you are dealing with is risk, if I start to think about it, if I start to apply the Tides model, I just cannot help but think that your industry is probably in my top 3 of examples of industries that are about to experience deep structural change, even down to the level of what risk is. Think about this, right? For health insurance, okay? So medical aids or health insurance, the whole point is to have a pool. So you put, let's just use round numbers. You put 1,000 people into a pool, and you know that of those 1,000 people, 30 of those people will get cancer. But you don't know who those 30 are. So the other 970 are there to provide protection or to spread the risk across the pool. But now we've got genetic testing. Now we've got mRNA and CRISPR. This is what last year's Nobel Prize for, what was it, chemistry or biology was awarded for, this ability to edit DNA. This ability to actually go in and work out precisely who's going to get dementia, who's going to get cancer. Maybe some of the researchers in the space, maybe even the month in which your cancer will start in your system. It might be built into your DNA. If it is, why on earth, if I go and get that test done and I don't have any risk of cancer, why on earth would I want you to put me in a pool of people who didn't know what their risk profile was? I wouldn't. If we've got driverless cars and we reduce the risk of accidents by 96%, you think your industry is going to just stay the same? Risk is about not knowing. We live in a world where, if nothing else, we know more than we've ever known before, and we keep finding new ways to know new things. So let's finish. What does this crisis give us? Well, gives us a crisis that we have to deal with. We've got to get through COVID, get it done. I think if you're watching this broadcast, if you're at InsureTalk this year, you've probably done that, so well done. Now, the second thing you've got to do is not just wait for the crisis to be over so we can get back to normal. Or maybe even worse, wait for the crisis to be over so that we can stabilize our system, so that we can then start thinking about what we do next. No, I think you've got to take this crisis as a dress rehearsal for what the rest of your life is going to feel like. In other words, completely disrupted all of the time. And you've got to take it as an opportunity to say, how do we do our best work in the middle of chaos? And if we can get that right, at multiple levels, if we can get that right, we will build a great business and we'll do a great job of being ready for whatever the future brings. That is how you prepare for tomorrow's world today. Thanks again for the support of our sponsors, CIB, for this session in particular. And those of you who would like to contact me directly, you're very welcome to do that. Again, you can get a copy of the slides that might help you to just think this through, chat it through with your team. But here's how to get connected with me. What you might want to do is connect with me, especially on YouTube and LinkedIn, because I put regular, like almost daily videos and commentaries up there that I hope will help you. This is my passion. I hope that's come across, helping people like you think about how the future will be different and prepare for it today. InsureTalk and CN&CO team, thank you very much for inviting me to chat today. And thank you. I've kind of been watching the chat. I didn't see any particular questions coming through that I needed to engage with. And well, thank you for your thanks now. Thank you, everybody. Back to the team.
Graham, thank you so much for that presentation. Absolutely loved it. From the background graphics to those brain gymnastics you had us doing. It was truly, truly fantastic. Some of our attendees worried there that their brains are not quite filtering the way that they should. Graham Codrington's presentation was, of course, courtesy of our headline sponsor today, CIB. So a huge, huge thank you. All right, we're going to head on over to our last speaker for the day. His name is Tony van Niekerk. He is the editor-in-chief at Cover Magazine, and he's going to be doing his usual segment and giving us a media update. So over to you, Tony van Niekerk.
Right, thank you very much. That was such an informative talk. And yeah, I don't know if I must feel privileged or sad about the fact that, Graham, I'm following on you, but I'll try my best. Thank you very much for InsureTalk, and then also my friends at CIB for allowing me this quick update. As usual, I'm going to take five minutes or so to just give you a quick update on some of my thoughts and some of the stuff that I pick up in the media. I thought today with the current environment globally, not just in South Africa, to talk a little bit about fake news. And there's so much to talk about when it comes to fake news that obviously I will just highlight 3 or 4 of the interesting things that I find on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to start off with a quote that I'm going to give you. The quote goes, "Strange times are these in which we live, when old and young are taught falsehoods, and the one man that dares to tell the truth is called at once a lunatic and a fool." And this is so relevant in today's environment. And the funny thing is that this was said by Plato many, many hundreds of years ago. So it was even relevant then that people spread fake news and that people really believed, because people have their own truth and they believe that that is true. Now, on a journalism side, an old quote in the journalism environment, it says, when one source says it's raining and another says it's shining, look out the window and see for yourself. And for me, when it comes to fake news, this is exactly what it's all about. You cannot just trust news that arrives in your inbox, in your Twitter account, in Instagram, Facebook. You have to think for yourself. And the journey starts with thinking for yourself, because fake news is not just lies. Fake news could be a deliberate untruth, a story that contains some truth and that is completely accurate, but by accident or by design. But what people do is they just tweak that true message to suit their agenda. So what is important in today's environment is that we need to be able to know how to deal with fake news. Now, at Cover, I get at least 3 emails a day from companies who would like to put clickbait news at the bottom of our news feeds and at the bottom of our newsletters. And the whole idea with clickbait is that they give you a false headline, and then they would try and lure you into opening and engaging with them. And it is not really fake news, but what people do is they use your own mindset, your own agendas that you've got in terms of your work, in terms of your socio-political environment or your economic environment. And they use that mindset to infiltrate those little things that would spark an emotion with you. And that emotion then leads you to click on a subject. So when it comes to fake news and to trying to identify what fake news is, there's a whole lot of criteria. There's been a whole lot of research about that, etc. But for me, from a practical perspective, and I have to obviously filter through thousands and thousands of pieces of news on a continuous basis. I have to filter social media news, etc. For me, the most important thing is, the first thing is check if it gets up my back. Is there some sort of emotion that is picked on as soon as I open this? As soon as I find that there's something that makes me angry, something that gets my back up, I know that I should be wary and I should look at what is the agenda behind this piece. And usually somebody has got an agenda, and what they do with that agenda is they try to pick on a group of people that have an emotion that will be triggered by that particular piece. Now, what they do with that news then is they herd those people into groups. So by picking on your emotion, by picking on what gets you excited, they lure you into groups, which means that eventually what you start doing is you start unfollowing people that don't have the same views, visions, the same emotions, etc., and you start following the people that have. And what then happens is, slowly but surely, you actually get yourself into sort of an echo chamber where even fake news sounds true, because once the fake news comes out, everybody around you echoes that this is true, and they quote other news that has got the same agendas. And slowly but surely you start believing fake news, and you start having difficulty spotting what fake news is. So in closing of my few minutes, I want to say to you, first of all, look at whether it brings up an emotion in you. And that's the first headline. Second one is, if there's anything all caps, in other words, big letters, that's usually fake news. If it makes your blood boil, fake news. If it says urgent, emergency, it is probably fake news. If it ends off by saying, you have to share this, please share now, it's usually fake news. Now, to spot and do a little bit more in depth, what I usually do is I just take 2 or 3 keywords out of this. These 2 or 3 keywords I then post into Google and I put the word fake behind it. As soon as you do that, if there's anything related to people talking about this as fake news, or any of the fact check sites have checked it, it will pop up for you a couple of URLs that you can click on to check why this is fake news, and you can check what is the real news around this. So that for me is a very important one if I can't spot whether it is actually fake or not. What you can also then do is check the date. Usually, once you post this into a URL and you check the date, sometimes they post something from the previous election or from a flood that was a while ago. And in the meantime, this has happened 10 years ago. And then lastly, there's an old saying that says, if in doubt, just flush it out. In other words, if you think that there's something wrong with this, don't share it, don't believe it, and unless you're going to further research it, just ignore it and delete it. So that, in brief, is a little bit of my take on fake news. It's everywhere, it's constant, and it's very, very well disguised, and it's usually people with agendas that is not necessarily a good agenda for the reader or the audience. So to end off with something positive, what I find incredibly positive about fake news, and I'm sort of a male and a junk mail and an information junkie myself. What I find incredible about and helpful about fake news is that fake news allows you to spot people's agendas. It allows you to spot groups of people that have a similar mindset. It allows you to see where conversations are being driven by certain players in the market. So fake news can be very helpful, and it can play an important role in the life of anybody who's researching a subject, is to check what the trends are and what the agendas are behind that fake news. So in future, make sure that you just follow a couple of those guidelines and don't fall into the trap of sharing fake news. So that's it from me at Cover. Thank you very much for your time. And as usual, please sign up. There's no fake news on our site. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tony, for wrapping it up for us nicely over there. That does bring us to the end of our session today. So once again, a huge thank you to our event partners today. CIB, of course, being our headline sponsor, with our other event partners being Munich Re, the IISA, as well as Cover Magazine. By the way, we are broadcasting today from the IISA offices, so a huge thank you to the IISA as well on that front. Then a huge thank you to all of our attendees for joining us. Once again, we had over 1,000 attendees in this session. Truly remarkable. So a huge thank you to you once again. A reminder again that InsureTalk11 will be taking place on the 15th of April. So you can head on over to the CN&CO events.com website to purchase, to get your tickets. Sorry, it is free. Head on over to the CN&CO events.com website to secure your spot today. Then a huge thank you once again to all of our speakers for sharing your valuable insights with us. We truly did enjoy it. And with that said, I will leave you with this very short slogan that epitomizes innovation. Think differently. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Nontusuko. It's been an absolute pleasure being your host. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Stay safe and see you at InsureTalk11.